Welcome back to the night shift. Tonight, we are doing something different. We are going deeper into the dark than we ever have before. We aren't just telling stories. I've worked as an Uber driver for a little over 3 years. I've had all kinds of clients sitting in the back of my car, all types of people, and, of course, strange people, but this event scarred me for life. By far, it surpassed anything else I've ever experienced in this job. One night I was driving through a wealthy area in Los Angeles. It's worth mentioning that I'm Hispanic, but I've been living here for many years. That night seemed quiet. I was just waiting for a ride to pop up, since this is how I make a living, and that's how it went. At around 9 at night, I got a trip that was about 30 minutes away from where I was, but still within the wealthy area. The trip was requested by a very well-dressed lady, about 50 years old from what I could see in her photo. I drove immediately toward the address, but I took about 10 minutes longer than I should have because there was an accident on the freeway and I had to go around. That's how this city is. Lots of traffic and lots of accidents too. When I finally arrived at my destination, I pulled up in front of the door of the lady's home. I thought she would be ready or maybe a bit annoyed by the delay, but when I got there, she wasn't outside yet and she didn't come out immediately either. In fact, minutes were passing and she wasn't coming out. I opened the messages to tell her that I was already outside her house, but then I noticed that she had already written something to me, only it didn't make any sense. It was just symbols, without any coherence or message. I didn't think much of it, and sent her the message that I was already outside her home, waiting for her, and to please excuse my delay. But the lady didn't respond. Suddenly, I saw someone peek out from the upstairs window on the top floor of the house. I couldn't see well who it was because there was a transparent curtain that only allowed me to see the silhouette, but of one thing I was sure. It was a male silhouette. I thought that maybe it was the lady's husband or son, that maybe he would let her know I was already there waiting for her. But about 3 minutes passed and nobody came out, until I checked my phone and saw that she left me the following message. "Sorry, I'm going to cancel the trip. I'm not going out anymore." To maintain my good service, I simply replied that there was no problem and told her to have a good night. Though on the inside I was a bit annoyed because I turned down another trip that came in almost at the same time to accept hers. But anyway, these things happen in this job. It's not rare for them to cancel trips regardless of whether you've arrived. So I just left. The night went on normally. I had a few trips during the night, and then I went home to rest. The next day, I received a call from the Uber company because they told me the police were looking for me to interrogate me since the security cameras of a house had captured my car outside, and in that house, a woman's life had been taken in a savage way. The cameras placed me at the crime scene moments before that terrible event. I was very bewildered. I went immediately to the police station because I wanted to clear myself of anything. There they interviewed me and told me to show them the messages I exchanged with the victim, who of course was that lady who had canceled the trip on me the night before. I mentioned to them that I had seen a male silhouette peek through the window, but that it didn't seem strange to me, and that's why I just decided to leave. Later they told me the lady lived alone. The person I saw was the killer, who by the way was a fugitive. They also believed that the person who sent me the message telling me the trip was canceled had been him. When I finished being interrogated, I went home in tears because I couldn't deal with the guilt of what would have happened if I had called the police or if I had stayed there. Many things were going through my head, but there was no way of knowing that was happening and that the woman was in danger. Those of us dedicated to this trade are exposed to these kinds of things, and those who hear my story won't let me lie. I'm still working for Uber, but much more paranoid on every trip. Anyway, that was my story in the city of Los Angeles. Speaker 2. How's it going? My name is Gerardo. About 3 years ago, I worked as an Uber driver in my city. It was for a very short period of time because this exact event made me quit, and you'll soon realize you would have done the same. I worked at night because that was when there were fewer Uber drivers, and in general, I really liked driving at night. And believe it or not, at least in my city, I did earn much more than when I worked during the day. But anyway, That time I left my house at around 10 at night and did a few trips. And at about 2 in the morning, one came up that I really hesitated to take because the client wanted me to take him to a place very far away that was already out on the highway. To be honest, I was scared because of the danger of being in those places so late, mostly because of organized crime. Plus, it seemed weird to me that the guy didn't have a photo on his profile in the app, which is strange because Uber always requires one. But what made me accept was that the guy sent me a message telling me he would give me a 15% tip on whatever the trip cost, because he was aware it was very far. I couldn't say no to that because I really needed the money. In the end, I accepted the trip and went to the address the app showed me to pick him up. Arriving there, I did feel some fear because it's a dangerous area of the city where there are many robberies and even homicides. The location from where they requested the trip was a house in very bad condition and without light. Anyone would bet it was an abandoned house. But I parked, and in less than a minute the guy came out. But I was stunned because that guy was dressed as a clown. His costume was very terrifying, to be honest. But, well, clowns always scared me. But he really gave off a very creepy vibe. The guy got into the back seat of my car. He acted very friendly at first and said to me, "Good evening. Thank you for accepting the ride. I tried to order an Uber 3 times, but they all rejected it except you." He said that to me with a somewhat unsettling smile. I just smiled back and started driving. It's worth mentioning that the guy was carrying a bag slung over his shoulder. I thought he had his clothes in there to change into after leaving wherever he was headed. We were leaving the city. There were almost no cars on the road and everything was very quiet, silent, and dark, terrifying. In a few words. The whole time the guy was watching me through the rearview mirror, and every time I turned to look at him, he would smile at me. I started to feel very uncomfortable and with a sense of danger. I already wanted to reach the destination so he would get out and I could go back home because after that I didn't feel right to continue working that night. The atmosphere was very murky, and the fact that the guy was dressed as a clown made it twice as terrifying. Finally, we were approaching the destination, but there was nothing there. It was just woods. I reached the end of the route, but literally it was in the middle of nowhere. I pulled over and asked him, "Is it here?" He replied, smiling that yes, thank you for the service, and he gave me the tip he had promised me. He got out of my car and I started driving back home. While I was moving away, I could see through the rearview mirror the guy standing on the shoulder of the road watching me, seeing how I drove away and without removing that macabre smile from his face. I accelerated as much as I could to get off the highway and drove straight to my house. When I finally got home, I took the money out of my pocket that the guy had given me as a tip and noticed something disturbing. 2 of the bills were stained red. I don't know if I should say it was blood, but it looked like it. I left the money in a drawer and didn't want to touch it or spend it. I went to sleep, and that was that. A few days passed, and one afternoon I was watching the news with my mother, and there I saw him. It was the report that they were looking for that clown. He was a fugitive since he was responsible for the deaths of 3 children whom he lured to his home and later asked for a ransom from their parents. The parents paid, but even so, he took their lives. They knew it was him because he had been caught on several security cameras, and in his home they found belongings of the children, although their bodies had been found outside the city in a wasteland. This was like something out of a movie. My head started to connect everything that happened that night, and I couldn't stop thinking that maybe in that bag he was carrying one of those children. I was terrified. Of course, I went to give my statement to the police, and not even a week passed when they found him. The guy is currently serving his sentence. I, of course, quit as soon as I found out about all that. Without a doubt, those of us who do this are exposed to many things, even to a killer getting into our cars. Speaker 3. Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Luis, and I worked for the Uber platform as a driver a year ago. I don't do that anymore, but during that time, some unusual events happened to me. But this is, without a doubt, the most terrifying, at least for me. One afternoon at about 8 p.m., I received a trip. It was a guy who was outside a shopping mall near where I was. I quickly accepted the trip and went to pick him up. It was already a bit dark, but arriving, I see the young man who was standing on the sidewalk already waiting for me. I opened the car window and asked him if he was Raul. He nodded his head, saying yes. He got in. I started the trip, and I always used to make small talk with people, to be nice and friendly, and that time was no exception. I asked the guy how his day had been, but he wouldn't answer me. He was just looking straight ahead without saying anything. It seemed weird to me because I had never had someone not respond when I asked them something. Well, I had been answered in a contemptuous or unfriendly way, but they always answered me anyway. I didn't want to push it anymore because I thought the guy simply had a bad day or didn't feel like talking. So, we went in silence the whole way. It's worth mentioning that he was in the back seat on the passenger side, but I could see him through the mirror. We were halfway through the trip when I received a message from the platform. It was the guy who had ordered the Uber asking me where I was, that he was still waiting for me at the shopping mall. I felt my skin crawl. Right then I turned back, but nobody was there anymore. The guy who had gotten in was gone. I pulled over to take a breath and analyze everything that had happened. I canceled the trip for the other guy who was still waiting for me at the mall, and I was just there parked, scared and bewildered at the same time. I called my girlfriend to tell her everything, and she got excited because she loves ghost stories and everything paranormal. To this day, I never found out who got into my car, if maybe it was a lost soul looking for its way. I don't know, but it still gives me chills to remember it. Speaker 4. A while ago, when I was an Uber driver, something rather disturbing and chilling happened to me with a passenger. You see, one night, an older lady, about 65 years old, requested my service through the platform. She was at the bus station and was heading home. I went for her and helped her put her suitcases in the car. She was very nice to me, and nothing unusual happened during the trip. She was telling me that her husband was already waiting for her at home because she wasn't used to leaving him alone, but that it had been an emergency trip because a friend of hers had gotten seriously ill and that's why she had to leave the city. She also kept telling me that she didn't have children and that she and her husband were somewhat lonely because nobody ever visited them, which is why it weighed so heavily on her to leave him alone. I kept the conversation going and also told her some normal things, trying to be friendly and make the trip pleasant. Arriving at her house, I helped her get the suitcases out of my car. She asked me as a favor if I could take them inside because her back already hurt from carrying them the whole time. Of course, I agreed immediately. I carried her suitcases and she opened the door to her house for me. When I entered, the first thing I saw is an image that I will never be able to erase from my head. There on the sofa was her mummified husband. The man was clearly lifeless, but the lady had managed to mummify him in a very professional way because it didn't smell bad or anything like that. But that was the most disturbing thing I had ever seen. The lady entered her house like it was nothing, greeting him as if he were alive, and I remember her saying, "Did you miss me?" smiling at him and giving him a kiss on the forehead. I wanted to run out of there. I just told her that her suitcases were there and that I had to go. She told me to wait so she could give me a tip, but I told her not to worry and to leave it at that. I didn't want to be in that place for one more second. I left and got into my car and drove home because I was too disturbed to keep working. In conclusion, I won't give more details about what happened after, if the police went to look for her or whatever. There are very strange people around us who look like normal people. Speaker 5. Me dedico a ser chofer de Uber en mi ciudad desde hace ya algún tiempo. Me ayuda a pagar mis estudios, pues por el día estudio en la universidad. Este suceso que estoy a punto de contarles sucedió una noche, que salí a trabajar como solía hacerlo siempre. A eso de las 3 de la madrugada me salió un viaje. Yo dudé en tomarlo pues ya iba para mi casa para descansar un poco y poder ir a la universidad, pero era un largo recorrido así que también era una buena paga. Fue por eso que decidí tomarlo. It was a guy who was at a residence and wanted me to take him to an address a bit far away that was by the beach. I drove and arrived at this place. There outside a house was the guy who requested the trip, another guy, and a girl about 20 years old. The 3 of them got into my car and I started driving. What seemed strange to me is that the girl seemed a bit out of it because they had to help her into the car and she had a vacant look. I couldn't help but ask if the girl was okay, and one of the guys told me yes, that she was his girlfriend, but she was a little drunk, that they were coming from a friend's party. The guy was friendly. He even told me thank you for asking. I kept driving and during the way none of the 3 spoke. The girl had her head resting on the shoulder of the guy who told me he was her boyfriend, with her look completely vacant, and the other guy just looked everywhere during the whole trip. And we were about to arrive at the destination when the girl started to react a little. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out, but she looked a bit agitated. The guys were telling her to keep quiet, that they would arrive soon and put her to sleep, but she kept moving like something was bothering her. To be honest, I started to feel uncomfortable and to doubt if he really was her boyfriend like he had told me, because the girl didn't seem drunk, rather it seemed as if they had given her some substance. But anyway, I couldn't do much being there because they were two guys, and very tall for that matter. What I thought to do was that upon dropping them at the address, I would call the police, just so they could check if the girl was okay, and that's how it went. I dropped them at that place, which was a small house in the woods, way out of the city. They got out and got the girl out. I immediately left and called the police just to report the situation. I gave them the address and went home. To this day, I still regret that, having left, because at about 6 inches the morning, I received a call from the police requesting my presence at the prosecutor's office to testify as a witness because they had found the lifeless body of a young woman on that land. Yes, it was the same girl who had gotten into my car the night before. The guys were fugitives. Her mother stated that she didn't have a boyfriend, so they had lied to me. In reality, they were taking that poor girl deprived of her liberty to do I don't know what kind of misdeeds. If you're wondering, they never caught the guys, because the profile from which the Uber was requested that night had been created with a stolen ID. This is still something hard to tell because I've lived with the guilt since that day.